To discuss the situation as Ecuador prepares for the second round of the presidential elections this Sunday, we now welcome Fidel Narváez, former Ecuadorian consul in London, to offer his views on this crucial vote. Fidel, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Fidel, what are the stakes for Ecuadorians in this Sunday's elections, and what are the different models that the two presidential candidates, Andrés Arauz and Guillermo Lasso, represent?
Well, there is so much at stake in this election. I would say that it's a crucial election, probably the more important election for Ecuador in modern history. To begin with, we need to come out of the nightmare which in the last 4 years the government of Lenin Moreno put Ecuador into. The government has launched such a fierce persecution and disrespect for basic human rights and political rights in Ecuador that in this election this has to finally end. And we have a clear election between two models. One, which is the progressive project that we had for 10 years with the citizen revolution, which did so much for us Ecuadorians in terms of reduction of poverty, reduction of inequalities, building new infrastructure, and basically many achievements in terms of human rights, economic rights, political rights. Or the neoliberal agenda, the neoliberal project that has been in place with Lenin Moreno in the last 4 years, which is represented by Mr. Guillermo Lasso, who has in fact colluded in government with Moreno in the last 4 years. So the choice there is very, very clear, and I very much hope that the Ecuadorians will choose the progressive project.
Fidel, even though the polls suggest a victory for Andrés Arauz, a significant portion of voters seem to be undecided. Former candidate Yaku Perez, who ran on an indigenous people's platform aiming to secure support from the left, is now calling to boycott the runoff, claiming that he was a victim of fraud. How may this affect the final outcome, and how big must Arauz's advantage be in order to avoid his victory being taken away by claims of fraud?
We need to understand that the indigenous movement, being a very important social movement in Ecuador, is not a monolithic entity. There are several divisions inside the indigenous movement, and not all of them are going to boycott the election. In fact, many indigenous leaders have already expressed publicly support for Andrés Arauz and the progressive project. Some of them will vote null, that's true, and some of them have even expressed support for Guillermo Lasso. So I think there's going to be an important percentage of people boycotting the election, but it's not going to be decisive. I think majority of the indigenous movement will vote for us because the agenda that the citizen revolution had for all Ecuadorians, including indigenous Ecuadorians, is very much in tune with the indigenous movement's own agenda. So we will need to win by a decent margin. That is true, because Mr. Lasso, in the previous election, he already wanted to present the framework of supposed fraud. But I'm confident that the Ecuadorians will give Mr. Arauz enough margin to put a clear victory on this election.
Fidel, as you said there, Andrés Arauz represents a coalition of progressive forces, such as those that supported former President Rafael Correa and the Citizens' Revolution. There's been a long and very strong campaign by right-wing sectors, supported by the media, against these forces, including political persecutions and authoritarian methods. Given a victory for Arauz, how would the new government deal with this kind of campaign? And how does the use of the media and social networks in this way influence government strategy?
Well, the attack against the progressives will continue. That's for sure. Even when Andrés will be in power, his priorities will be to rebuild the country, to tackle the sanitary emergency and the economic emergency. I don't think it's in anybody's interest to come with revenge or with vengeance tactics or agenda. I think the priority for him will be to focus on rebuilding the economy, tackling the sanitary emergency that has been disastrous, has been so negligently tackled by Moreno, that basically the victory that he's going to have will show why the Ecuadorians are doing the right choice in put him in charge of the economy and of Ecuador in these hard times in my country.
Fidel Narváez, former Ecuadorian consul in London, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for offering your valuable insight into the presidential elections that will be held this Sunday in Ecuador. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.